Sebastian, you are amazing. You know, let me just say in front of everybody, this is all of our leaders and our young leaders. This is what it is about. When I look at them, I know our future as a country is bright. Can we please give it up for all of our young leaders and everyone? It is so great to be in the Tri-C and to be with everyone here. I want to thank Marcia Fudge. Where is Marcia? There you are. Marcia Fudge, listen, let me just tell you, I've been in the United States Senate now about almost 4 years. Marcia Fudge is a force. Marcia Fudge is a force. I know she is a leader in Ohio, but let me tell you, everyone recognizes Marcia Fudge's leadership as a national leader, and Marcia makes it clear, anybody want to win that White House? You're coming through me, she'll say. You're coming through me. And she's right, because it is here in Cleveland and Cuyahoga County that you make the decisions, that you are part of the leadership that decides who will be in the White House. And let us remember, the White House is the people's house. It is the people's house. It's not Donald Trump's house, it's the people's house. And we, the people, will make a decision about who has the microphone that makes the decisions that impact our lives every day. The people will make the decision because the power is indeed with the people. And I want to thank you all for everything you are doing. We were out and visiting with folks who are engaged in early voting. People are standing in line. They've been in line for hours because we know our power, and we are not going to let anyone take our power from us. And we know there is so much at stake in this election, guys. There is so much at stake. Look at where we are. We're right in the middle of dealing with a nation that is in the midst of 4 crises that are occurring simultaneously. We are in the midst of a public health crisis. Have a seat. Go on and have a seat. If you feel like sitting, go on. And then get up and stand up from time to time, too. We are in the midst of a public health epidemic that has taken the lives of over 220 million Americans in just the last several months, many of whom in their last days on this earth, because of the nature of this virus, could not be with their family, could not be with their friends, who could not touch the hand or look in the gaze of someone they love. We are looking at a nation where over 8.5 million people have contracted this virus. Doctors are telling us, scientists are telling us, with unknown long-term consequences, health consequences, because of this virus. A public health pandemic, the nature of which we have never seen, a mass casualty event in the United States of America, unlike what we have seen since World War II. And let's put it in context. Thanks to Bob Woodward, back on January 28th, we know Donald Trump was informed about the nature of this virus. He was told it will kill people. He was told it is airborne. He knew it could impact young people. He knew it was 5 times more deadly than the flu. And he sat on that information and did not tell the American people. Can you imagine what you as a parent, as a grandparent, as a small business owner, how you could have prepared if on January 28th, you knew what this was going to be? Because remember, even before January 28th, folks weren't doing so well. Even before then, we knew most American families have less than $1,000 in life savings. Even before then, we knew folks were working 2 and 3 jobs to try and pay the rent and put food on the table. And by the way, in Joe Biden and my America, we believe nobody should have to work more than 1 job to have food on the table and pay their rent. Can you imagine what folks would have been able to do if they knew what Donald Trump knew? But he didn't tell anybody. Instead, he lied. He lied to the American people. He mocked the seriousness of it. He called it a hoax. He suggested that he keeps it an agenda that determines which side of the ledger you're on based on whether you wear a mask or not. If you don't wear a mask, you're with him. If you wear a mask, you're not. Can you imagine? The President of the United States, who is also the Commander-in-Chief, who has as his highest and most important responsibility to concern himself with keeping the American people safe. But yet we had a person who looks in the mirror, and that is where he informs his priority, instead of looking in the faces of the American people. And so we find ourselves in this moment of crisis, where in Ohio, we are looking at 1 in 10 families who is concerned that they don't have enough food to put on the table to feed their family. Where in Ohio, we are looking at 1 in 6 families that either could not or are concerned they cannot pay the rent by the end of the month. Where in Ohio, 1 in 5 businesses has shut with no prospect of being able to reopen. We are looking at a failure of an administration like we have never seen in the history of presidential administrations in our land. And from the public health crisis, we also have endured an economic crisis that is being compared to the Great Depression. Over 30 million people in just the last several months had to file for unemployment. Folks in Ohio and across the country have been driving to or standing in food lines for hours praying that by the time they get to the end of the line, there will still be food left. In America today, 1 in 5 mothers is describing her children under the age of 12 as being hungry. We're not covering it enough in the press, but we're in the midst of a hunger crisis in America. We're looking at the fact that almost half of American workers either work for a small business or own a small business. And those doors have been shuttered. But we have a Donald Trump who walks around and says, oh, we're turning the corner on this. He just said that this week. The nerve for him to think the American people aren't smart enough to see what's going on in their own families and neighborhoods, much less in what's going on in the country. And you know, on the economy, as on every other issue, there are 2 clear choices in this election. On the one hand, you have Joe Biden, who says, the way I measure the economy, if you want me to tell you how the economy is doing, then tell me how are working people doing in America. That's how Joe Biden measures the economy. How are working families doing in America? Which is why in a Biden-Harris administration, 1, taxes will not be raised on anyone making less than $400,000 a year, but it doesn't stop there. There will be middle-class tax cuts, but in addition, we know that folks need support, that working families should not and therefore will not in a Biden-Harris administration pay more than 7% of their income in child care. We know that one of the greatest ways that any American family achieves economic health and intergenerational wealth is through home ownership. So we will have, for every first-time home buyer, a $15,000 tax credit to help you with down payment and closing costs to be able to buy a home. We know for our college students, so many of our students cannot graduate because they can't afford tuition, which has nothing to do with their God-given capacity to be national and international leaders. So Joe Biden and I say and commit, if you come from a family that makes less than $125,000 a year, you go to a 4-year state college for free or an HBCU, public or private, for free. And when you graduate, if you go on to take a job that is about public service, community service, the kind of jobs that pay less than $125,000, we will erase your debt. because we understand that's how you build up the economy. So you have Joe Biden on the one hand, and then you have Donald Trump. And when you ask him, how's the economy doing, you know what he says? Oh, the economy is great. The economy is great, he says. And then you ask him, well, how so are you measuring this so-called greatness of this economy of yours? And he talks about the stock market. Because you see, Donald Trump measures how well the economy is doing based on how rich people are doing. That's why he passed that tax code, but that tax bill benefiting the top 1% and the biggest corporations in America. Well, let me tell you something. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are about to get rid of that when we get elected. And that money is going to be invested in working people. So we're in the midst of a public health crisis, an economic crisis, and a long overdue reckoning on racial injustice in America. And on this issue, let's be clear. Again, two very clear choices. On the one hand, you have Joe Biden, who has the courage and the commitment and the knowledge of America's history to speak the term Black Lives Matter. On the other hand, you have a Donald Trump who will never speak those words. On the other hand, you have a Donald Trump who stood on that debate stage last debate and refused to condemn white supremacists and then doubled down and said, well, stand back and stand by. And then people say, well, do you think he's a racist? Yes.